Elaine Mills is our speaker today. She had the foresight to order a snow up for this talk to make it even more relevant than it was before. And you should know that she prepped this talk by using many, many sources, and I doubt you would find all this information in one spot, except for Elaine's talk. She trained as a master gardener in 2012 and right away developed a special interest in sustainable landscaping and native plants. She created our first set of tried and true native plants that are on our website and very popular. She has spent the past 12 years growing native plants and photographing them in local public and private gardens, and she enjoys using some of these photos to illustrate her talks, articles, and videos. In the past, she has served as one of the coordinators of our Glen Carlin demonstration garden, and just this year began chairing the Master Gardener Northern Virginia Public Education Committee. And we are delighted to have you, Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Welcome, everyone. As Colleen mentioned, I've been doing background research for this talk for several months, and we just happened to schedule it the week of a big snowstorm here in Northern Virginia. With climate change, we've been tending to see fewer big snowstorms in the mid-Atlantic region. But even the threat of a wintry mix can bring local governments and homeowners bringing out their salt-based products to keep roadways, driveways, and sidewalks safe. Salt is used because it lowers the freezing temperature of water, melting existing ice or preventing snow and ice from accumulating on these surfaces. 24 million tons of these products are applied annually in the United States. And while they don't cause damage to the asphalt surface of roads, they cause a great deal of corrosion to the undercarriage of vehicles, the steel supporting structure of bridges, and they can damage concrete when it goes through repeated freeze and thaw cycles. Of course, these products leave a residue that's toxic to pets when ingested. It's irritating to their paws. 1 teaspoon of salt permanently pollutes 5 gallons of water, and that means that the melting runoff can contaminate our waterways, harming aquatic life. For those of us as gardeners, of course, the major concern is damage of salt to our soil and the plants that grow in it. A quick overview. We'll begin by talking briefly about some of the salt-based and other products that are used by local jurisdictions, the effect of this salt both on the plants and the soil they grow in. We'll discuss some possible treatments for salt damage. We'll look at alternative products for home use and other garden practices that we can put into play. And the major part of the talk will discuss salt-tolerant native plants that you might want to introduce into your home landscapes. So let's begin looking at those products, their effects, and possible treatment. In Maryland, for example, sodium chloride, that's rock salt, is the most common de-icing chemical. The reason for that is it's inexpensive, readily available, and easy to store. Now, some of the time they will also use salt brine, which is a liquid solution of about 1/4% salt and 3/4 water, and that's used to pre-treat roads. This pre-wetted salt adheres better to road surfaces and can reduce overall salt usage. In Virginia, sodium chloride again is the primary de-icing chemical applied to roads. Liquid sodium chloride, the brine, is an economical pre-treatment. And calcium chloride and liquid magnesium chloride are sometimes used either for de-icing or anti-icing. These are more expensive, but they are less corrosive and less harmful to plants. There are some alternative products being used both in the United States and Canada. These are organic byproducts, and they range from the beet juice that you see being dripped here in the city of Calgary to the waste products of other food and beverage productions. Even peony leaves pulverized along with the stalks have been considered for possible use. These, of course, are not standalone products. They're actually mixed with the salt brine to make it stickier. These boost the performance. They luckily can reduce the salt application rate. They're generally considered to be greener, but runoff from these products can cause algae blooms in waterways affecting fish. Two other products, calcium magnesium acetate and potassium acetate, that go by the abbreviations CMA and KA, do not contain chlorides. They operate in a slightly different way to prevent ice and snow from bonding to surfaces. They're less corrosive and considered safer for plants, pets, and other animals. But unfortunately, they have a high cost, so their widespread use is less effective, and they're not as biodegradable as originally considered. The runoff has impacts on oxygen levels in our waterways. So as you can see, there are really no easy solutions to how to deal with ice and snow on our roadways. Salt spray, that is the tiny water droplets containing dissolved salts, can be carried to plants from treated roadways. The droplets can travel as far as 1,000 feet, carried either by the wind or the fast movement of traffic. When these droplets evaporate, the sodium and chloride ions can penetrate plant tissues. This creates a distinct pattern of damage that you can see in the picture on the right. This is referred to as spray zone injury. This will first show up on our evergreens when the salt pulls moisture from the foliage, causing needle drop, but it can also cause damage to the swelling buds of deciduous trees and shrubs. Our local Virginia Tech University has some advice. They say that prompt treatment may reduce the injury from salt if it's handled after that initial exposure. If we're lucky enough to have rainfall after the snow melts, this may wash the salt off the leaves and stems. They also suggest that you could gently wash the salt residue off the plants with clean water. But of course, in the wintertime, there may be problems with access to the water if we've turned it off from our outside spigots. We may have drained our hoses and rolled those up for storage for the season. Salt can also accumulate in our soil as ice and snow melt, and high levels of these soluble salts actually break down soil structure. Small soil particles will wash into what are referred to as the open pores between the larger particles, and these reduce the movement of water and air through the soil. Clay soils are especially susceptible to this kind of compaction. Salt also brings about a major change in soil chemistry. The pH of the soil will become very high or alkaline, that is, above 8. And most of our plants prefer that neutral range around 6.0 to 7.0. Salt can also have an indirect effect on the plants that are growing in saline soil. This is brought about by the presence of what is called osmotic stress. That means that excess salts in the soil prevent the plant roots from accessing the water. The water is there, but they are suffering physiological drought because they cannot take it up. The plants will therefore close the stomata, those openings in their leaves, and that will reduce their ability to photosynthesize. High soil pH also upsets the uptake of vital nutrients such as potassium, calcium, and magnesium, leading to a nutritional imbalance. And cytotoxicity disrupts the function even on cellular level. And in a downward spiral, stressed plants are going to become more vulnerable to pests and diseases. Now, we saw that there was an almost immediate impact from salt spray on the plants, but soil-borne salt injury develops more slowly over time. And you may see some of these symptoms. There could be something as simple as the browning on edges of leaves, later on, wilting and stunted growth. The plants may develop yellowed or chlorotic leaves. That means that there is less chlorophyll in the leaves. That will lead to early fall coloration and leaf drop, or even the ultimate death of parts or the entire plant. Unfortunately, there are other factors such as root damage, drought, insects, disease, or chemical misuse that could cause some of these same symptoms. So diagnosis can be a challenge. But luckily, we can use soil tests to help with diagnosis if you suspect that salt is the issue. You can use the soil test to measure salt in parts per million. You see pictured on the right a sample soil test that I had done. Now, for this particular occasion, I was simply looking for the soil pH and the balance of certain nutrients. But if I had asked for it, this is where I would have seen the parts per million of salt reported. Most plants can tolerate a level up to 500 parts per million. But if you end up getting a result with a much higher salt report, you may be advised to apply granular gypsum. This is a soft, white, or colorless mineral, calcium sulfate dihydrate. And this would need to be applied in the window of time between when the soil is beginning to thaw, but before spring bud break, when the plants are beginning to take up water. This particular mineral will bind with the salt ions, making them more soluble, and then you'll be able to flush them out with heavy irrigation. Virginia Tech recommends about 2 inches of water provided over a period of 2 to 3 hours. Unfortunately, even this treatment may not reduce salts to acceptable levels. Penn State, for example, says that even 6 inches of water applied will only reduce the salt by about 50%. For further treatment, you might be advised to add organic matter to the affected soil. And you could do this either by retaining fall leaves or enriching the soil with compost. You'd also be advised to maintain a vegetative cover over the soil to prevent erosion. And if those soil salt levels are high, you would definitely be advised to avoid using inorganic fertilizers because they themselves contain salts that can alter the pH balance. And of course, their manufacture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. Let's take a look at what we might do as homeowners. Of course, there are various ice melt products that are sold for home use, but as you see, they are the same chemicals as those that are used on roads. So although they claim to be safe for pets, grass, and plants, they will have some of those same side effects that we've noted earlier. Now, CMA, that calcium magnesium acetate, is probably considered to be the safest, but note that it has a slower melting action and it's really only best for light accumulations of snow. In addition, while it has a reduced residue, any remaining moisture can refreeze, making surfaces slippery. The local Northern Virginia Regional Commission, which is a council of 13 local governments in the DC suburbs, has some homemade alternatives that they recommend. The first is cooled wood ash, which you could actually collect for free from your own fireplace or wood stove. You would spread this in a thin layer over icy patches, staying downwind so it doesn't blow on you. The dark color of the wood ash will absorb heat from the sun and will accelerate melting. And in the process, it provides great traction. Now, of course, this contains potash, which is potassium salts, but they won't harm paved surfaces and will generally be less problematic for plants. The only concern would be to avoid using them near acid-loving plants because this tends to neutralize the soil. Another option would be to use rubbing alcohol. You would combine this in a bucket with a half gallon of hot water to a quarter cup of the alcohol itself. This is the isopropyl alcohol that's being recommended. You would pour this onto a sidewalk or driveway to melt the snow and ice, keeping a shovel handy to scrape away any leftover ice. Now, some people actually use diluted rubbing alcohol applied to houseplants, for example, to treat it for pest infestations. But just be aware that direct, more concentrated application on plants can cause them to be dehydrated. So you would want to use this treatment as far away from soil as possible. Our local extension agent has a couple of other homemade alternatives. The first, of course, is just using mechanical tools. This is environmentally friendly, but you'd want to be shoveling the snow early and often to expose the surfaces to sunlight. As Colleen mentioned, if they linger, then they can turn to ice, making it more difficult to remove. The agent also suggests using black plastic sheeting over icy surfaces. This will trap solar energy and speed up the ice melt. But then, of course, you've got this leftover product to recycle or put into the trash. You might also want to use different traction improvers, such as sand, gravel, or wood shavings. But of course, you'd want to collect those up afterwards so that they're not going to be carried along with the melt water into our waterways. Of course, it's much easier and less expensive to find ways to prevent salt damage in the first place, rather than having to come up with various options for treatment. The first would be to try to use fences at the border of your property as windbreaks to intercept any of the salt drift that would come from a nearby roadway. You could also erect temporary burlap fencing or other types of barriers beside the road just in the winter time. It's also been suggested to use signage along the roads to prevent the plows from piling up the treated snow and ice on adjacent plantings. But of course, a lot of these snow plows are operating with big trucks. It would be hard for the drivers to maybe see the signs, and some of them operate in the early hours of the morning or even at night, and they might not even see the signs. There are also some other protective garden practices. We've mentioned improving soil structure by adding organic matter. You can also plan to irrigate deeply and infrequently to promote deeper root systems that are going to be more resistant to salt damage. You'd be looking for an inch of rain per week, or then, if not getting that much rain, supplementing with additional water. You can mulch to prevent evaporation of soil, plant sensitive plants 50 to 60 feet away from your paving. You could also do what's pictured here by planting uphill in berms or raised beds that will hold the plants away from any accumulation of salty water. Are there any questions at this point, Colleen?
Elaine, we have no questions at this point, so we can go forward.
For the majority of the talk, we'll be actually discussing salt-tolerant native plants. And at this point, you may want to turn to the two-page handout that I've provided. This came as a link along with the class registration, but it will also be available on the website when a recording of the class is posted. You'll see here that I've grouped the plants according to trees, shrubs, and various other plant types. The plants are listed by both their common and scientific names, and there are hot links that can take you to fact sheets, not just the fact sheets that we've created on our MGNV website, but even some others that talk about good care of the plants. Now, you'll notice that there are a series of abbreviations that follow the listing of the plants. And on the reverse side, you'll see the resources that I consulted. They range all the way from sources up in Maine all the way down to South Carolina. And the two-letter abbreviations are those that are typically used for the states, ME for Maine, VT for Vermont, for example. NYC refers to a list from the City of New York Parks and Recreation. CB is a resource on Chesapeake Bay watershed. And N stands for the Virginia Native Plant Society from the Northern Neck. NBG for Norfolk Botanical Garden, and H for Hoffman Nursery in North Carolina that specializes in grasses and sedges. Now, one resource that I accidentally omitted uses the abbreviation VIMS. That's for the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And I'll be sure to include the link to that should you want to refer to that along with these other resources for further information when I send out an addendum document that I always prepare and send to registrants after a talk is given. I also would like to give credit to Liz Maurer of Virginia Beach Master Gardeners, who shared some really helpful information in a presentation. Now, the plants that I'm suggesting would be good salt-tolerant selections for your gardens are the ones that were recommended on at least 3 of the 12 resources that I referred to. These plants are referred to as halophytes. These are plants that either grow natively in coastal areas or they're species that can tolerate salt spray from those roadside applications. And the characteristics that make them more adaptable, they have different genetic differences that either limit the salt uptake and transport within the plants. They adjust the ionic and osmotic balance in the cells of the roots and the shoots, or they actually regulate leaf development and the point at which they would drop their leaves. Some of these plants actually store salt in bladder-shaped cells on the leaf surface. So let's begin looking at these plants, and we'll look first at the salt-tolerant native trees. Eastern red cedar, Juniperus virginiana, is the plant that was the most salt tolerant of all, appearing on 11 of the 12 resources that I referred to. This is a tree that's found throughout eastern North America, throughout the mid-Atlantic, and it's also common throughout Virginia. It's a long-lived evergreen conifer, 30 to 40 feet tall. It begins with a pyramidal shape, and as it grows taller, you can see in the photo, the shape becomes a little more variable. It prefers sunny conditions, dry to moist soil. In fact, it has the best drought tolerance of any conifer that's native to the East Coast. In addition to tolerating salt, it can handle drought, heat, wind, and pollution, but note that it is intolerant of wet soil. And luckily, it's deer resistant. Red cedar is a plant with four-season interest. It has dense, scale-like foliage, making wonderful cover for birds, and it's also a larval host for caterpillars of moths. It has a lovely silvery exfoliating bark, and the strips of this are used as a nesting material for birds. This is a dioecious plant, and the female plants will have this lovely blue cone-like fruit that provides nourishment for 50 bird species. Red cedar can be used in the landscape in a variety of ways. You could plant it as a screen or a windbreak near roadsides. If those plants are a little tall, you might want to consider the gray owl cultivar, a shrub height plant, 3 feet tall, spreading about 6 feet wide. This could be used as a roadside planting or screen, a foundation planting, or a ground cover. But just note, you would want to avoid planting either of these types of plants near those that are alternate hosts for cedar apple rust. These are plants like serviceberry and crabapple that are in the rose family. Another tree that is salt resistant, this had 5 listings, is sweet bay magnolia, Magnolia virginiana, found on the coast from New Jersey to Louisiana and found particularly on the coastal plain here in Virginia. This plant is evergreen to semi-evergreen. Here in Northern Virginia, I saw local specimens holding onto their leaves until this big snowstorm. This tree grows 20 to 30 feet tall. It's multi-stemmed with a rounded crown. It can grow in sun to part shade and prefers moist to wet, rich acidic soil. It can actually, in addition to salt, tolerate occasional flooding, shade, and air pollution. I understand that deer, for some reason, may damage it more on the southern end of its range. Another tree with four-season interest. It has beautiful shiny green foliage, and this will provide nourishment for the caterpillars of swallowtail butterflies and moths. Its lemon-scented flowers attract pollinators from May to June. These are primarily beetles. Cone-like fruits mature in the late summer, and then the bright seeds will be available for wildlife. In the winter, you'll note smooth, lightly scented bark. In the landscape, it can be used either as a specimen, as a tall foundation planting, maybe on the edge of your house, or in the center of large rain gardens. Downy serviceberry was listed on 5 of the resources. This is Amelanchier arborea, found all the way from Maine to Virginia. It is found throughout Virginia and in scattered locations in the southeast and west. This is a deciduous understory tree reaching only 15 to 25 feet tall. It's multi-stemmed. It can grow in sun to part shade, but will do its best fruiting in full sun. It likes moist soil, tolerating clay and dry soil, as well as pollution, and deer seldom severely damage it. Another plant with four-season interest, it begins with these lovely white flowers in early spring, and these provide an important early nectar source for our native bees. The foliage is providing nourishment to many butterflies, and this enjoyable fruit shows up in May, enjoyed both by birds, and it can be prepared in a variety of different dishes, either eaten raw or cooked. The tree has brilliant fall color and beautiful dappled bark. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the discussion of red cedar, it is prone to the cedar apple rust disease. Now, this will not kill the tree, but you'll see these unsightly orange growths on the fruit. It can be used in the landscape in a number of ways, as a lawn tree, beside patios, as a street tree, or in woodland gardens. American holly, Ilex opaca, appeared on 4 of the resource lists. This is found from Pennsylvania south, particularly in the Piedmont and coastal plain in Virginia. This is a slow-growing evergreen pyramidal-shaped tree, 15 to 40 feet tall. It is dioecious. That means that there are separate male and female plants. So if you have a female plant and you're hoping to have it bloom and then fruit, you would either want to plant a male yourself or hope that there is a male somewhere within 200 feet in your neighborhood to ensure the cross-pollination and fruiting. This tree grows in sun to part shade and moist acidic soil, and luckily deer rarely damage it because of its prickly leaves. It also has four-season interest. The spiny leaves actually remain on the trees for 2 to 3 years before they are shed in various cycles, and these will provide cover and nesting sites for birds. There are fairly insignificant flowers that appear in the late spring, but these bright, characteristic drupes will appear from October on the female trees, and they are very important in the diet of winter birds. In the landscape, holly can be planted as a specimen. If you have a large property, you might plant several of them to grow together as a tall hedge. This particular plant benefits from afternoon shade in the summer, but be aware that full shade is going to result in less foliage density. There is a shorter form, a shrub height form, 2 to 3 feet tall, but spreading over 10 feet wide. This is Maryland dwarf. It's a female cultivar that will have the same fruit as the female trees. River birch, Betula nigra, appeared on 3 of the lists. This is found in the coastal plain along the eastern seaboard and the Piedmont in Virginia. This is a deciduous tree. Naturally, in the wild, it will grow with a single trunk, but many plant nurseries will actually group them in various combinations. I find that 3 multiple trunks, it creates a really nice balance. The tree grows 50 to 70 feet tall, very fast growing with an irregular crown. It can grow in sun to part shade, preferring moist to wet soil. In addition to salt, it can tolerate clay, compacted soil, heat, and air pollution, but note that it is intolerant of shade. And luckily, deer rarely damage it. This has been referred to by entomologist Doug Tellamy as a keystone species. That's because the Betula genus as a whole supports a very high number of butterflies and moths, in this case, 413 caterpillar species. River birch also has 4-season interest. You'll see these lovely catkins in the spring. Birds will consume the seeds. It has oval or triangular shaped leaves. And the most notable characteristic, of course, is its lovely exfoliating bark that peels away in papery layers. And the tree is absolutely stunning when set against the snow. In the landscape, it can be used as a specimen or in small groups for lawns, in large rain gardens, or along ponds or stream banks to control erosion. If you want to introduce this into your home landscape, I would particularly urge you to plant it away from your sidewalks and your driveways. This particular tree tends to drop a lot of very small twigs and branches over the growing season. It's easy enough to sweep them up when they're on the lawn, but they could cause a problem for foot traffic elsewhere. There is a small cultivar, Little King, that grows 8 to 10 feet tall if you have a smaller garden. Some additional trees that I found listed at least 3 times on the various resources are black gum, Nyssa sylvatica, and the 2 oaks, white oak and red oak, Quercus alba and Quercus ruba. The white oak is quite a large tree, best used as a shade tree on large properties, and the other 2 can be used either as lawn or street trees. Now let's take a look at some salt-tolerant native shrubs. The first is southern bayberry, also known as wax myrtle, Morella cerifera. This was listed on 7 of the resources. There is a northern bayberry, but this particular bayberry, which is native from Delaware to Florida, is best used in the mid-Atlantic. It's common in the coastal plain, but rare in the Piedmont region of Virginia. This is a very fast-growing broadleaf evergreen, reaching 10 to 15 feet tall. It grows in sun to part shade and prefers moist to wet soil. In addition to salt, it will tolerate high wind. But note that while it is both drought and flood tolerant, it requires a significant amount of moisture to establish it. I made the mistake of trying to introduce it into my garden during the full heat of this past summer, and the tree lost some foliage because I wasn't able to provide quite enough supplemental water. Luckily, this particular shrub is deer resistant, and that's due to the aromatic smell of the leaves. The leaves are olive green in color, and on the reverse side, you'll see that they're dotted with resin glands. This evergreen foliage will provide winter and heavy weather cover for wildlife. You'll see both male and female catkins in the spring. And this aromatic waxy fruit will appear on female plants. This is the fruit that was used for making bayberry candles, and it's enjoyed by many birds. In the landscape, bayberry can be pruned up, limbing it up to use as a small tree. You can keep that denser lower foliage to allow you to use it as a barrier or a privacy hedge. And it's also lovely when grouped with other species in a native plant garden. Another plant, common yucca, Yucca filamentosa, is actually considered a shrub. It's a so-called stemless shrub. This appeared on 6 of the resources. It's found from Virginia to Florida. It has a somewhat uncertain range within Virginia because some of the plants are considered to be escapes from cultivation. This is an evergreen plant. It has 3-foot tall basal foliage, and then it will send up the flower stalk in June, which reaches about 6 feet tall. It grows in sun to part shade, dry to moist, well-drained soil. In addition to salt spray, it tolerates pollution, drought, heat, and sandy soil. But note that it's intolerant of wet soil and it will rot out. Luckily, it's resistant because of the sharp edges of the foliage to rabbits and deer. Interestingly, there is a mutualistic relationship with the yucca moth. The yucca moth is the particular insect that can reach within those flowers to do pollination, and then it will in turn use those flowers as a protective covering for eggs. Common yucca grows from a basal rosette of pointed sword-like leaves, and offsets will form at the base, and they can be separated away and then give you extra plants to spread throughout your garden. There are characteristic thread-like filaments on the leaves, really lovely when they're backlit by the sun. And the foliage will also serve as a host plant for skippers. Yucca has very long-lasting flowers throughout the month of June, and hummingbirds will seek its nectar. These are the seed pods that will be seen in the later summer and fall. In the landscape, it can be grown on dry slopes. Here it's pictured in our shady demonstration garden. It can be used as a barrier, as an accent in xeriscapes, in large containers, or in garden beds. And here you can see that it can actually tolerate some shade. There are a number of different cultivars of common yucca, and they all have different variations of striping in different yellow and green patterns. Sweet pepper bush, Clethra alnifolia, also appeared on 6 of the resource lists. This is found all the way of the coast of Maine to eastern Texas, and in Virginia, it's found particularly in the coastal plain. It's an upright to rounded shrub growing 6 to 12 feet tall, the straight species. There are some smaller cultivars available. One of them that's particularly popular is the pink-flowered ruby spice that reaches 4 to 6 feet tall. And a white-flowered cultivar is hummingbird, 2 to 4 feet tall. Sweet pepper bush can actually grow in quite a range of sun exposures, but it will do best in part shade. It likes moist to wet soil, and luckily deer seldom severely damage it. This is another lovely plant for 4-season interest. You'll see these quilted leaves that host 11 different moth species. It has fragrant summer flowers, and what's nice is that these will be blooming in July to August when many of our other native shrubs have finished their blooming. And the flowers attract a wide range of pollinators, including bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. And then you'll see this brilliant fall foliage and winter seed for birds. In the landscape, it can be used in foundation plantings, perfect for butterfly gardens and rain gardens. It's very attractive for use near patios or entrances because of the fragrance of the flowers. And as you can see, it can actually sucker into colonies to make a nice surround. Inkberry, Ilex glabra, one of our native hollies, is appearing on 6 of the resources. This is found along the coast all the way from Maine around to Texas. And in Virginia, it's found in the southern and central coastal plain. This is a nice evergreen choice with a rounded form. The straight species grow 6 to 10 feet tall, but there are a number of shorter cultivars. One of them is shamrock, 3 to 5 feet tall, and the shorter gembox, 2 to 3 feet tall. This plant grows in sun to part shade, preferring moist to wet soil. Be alert that rabbits and deer may browse it. Inkberry has glossy evergreen foliage that will provide nourishment for the Henry's elfin butterfly, as well as wonderful cover for birds. This is a dioecious species. That means that there will be separate spring flowers on male and female plants. In the central photo here, you see the pollen on the anthers of the male plant, and this is a look at the female flowers with their central green cone. And they will draw bees for the nectar. From fall to winter, you'll see the fruit on pollinated female plants, and these will feed 15 bird species. In the landscape, you can use inkberry because of its spreading by root suckers for use as an evergreen hedge. It's also great for use in a border or beside foundations. It can also provide erosion control, as you saw in that initial photo where it was used in the large rain garden. Yaupon, another native holly, is Ilex vomitoria. This appeared on 4 of the resources. It's found in a more southerly range from Virginia to Texas. In fact, in Virginia, it's really only found in a few counties in the coastal plain. But I have seen it growing in a variety of public gardens in the mid-Atlantic region. This is a broadleaf evergreen growing 10 to 20 feet tall. It has many different cultivars. Some are columnar in shape. There is a little dwarf form, Nana, and there is even a weeping form. This is another plant that can grow in a range of sun exposures, but it tends to do best for flowering and fruiting in full sun. It, like the other holly, prefers moist to wet soil. In addition to salt spray, it can tolerate drought, occasional flooding, as well as a range of soil types, and it is deer resistant. Yaupon has very dense foliage with small leathery leaves, and it, like the inkberry, is a great substitute for non-native boxwood. It's a larval host for the Henry's elfin and the holly azure butterflies. Another dioecious species, you'll see these flowers on separate male and female plants. The flowers, which are fragrant, will be nectar for pollinators, and they also provide pollen for a specialist bee. Then this showy fruit will appear in clusters in the fall, enjoyed by birds and mammals on the female plants. In our landscape, it can be used in foundation plantings, in a more formal style garden, as you see here, in a drought-tolerant garden, or as a windbreak or barrier hedge. Some additional shrubs which appeared on 3 of the resources are black chokeberry, Aronia melanocarpa. It has wonderful nutritious fruit. We can enjoy it when prepared in cooked dishes. It can be used as a hedge or foundation plant. Highbush blueberry, Vaccinium corymbosum, which has the fruit that we enjoy. Birds will also enjoy it. This can be used as either a hedge or in a border. Please note that this particular plant is going to prefer a highly acidic soil, somewhere in the pH range between 4.5 to 5.5. So you would have to have that particular range in order to grow this particular shrub successfully. And another good choice would be red chokeberry, aronia, or butifolia. I find that this plant tends to sucker more than the black chokeberry, and you can allow it to sucker to spread as a wonderful tall screen. Its fruit tends to linger more on into the winter time, and it has spectacular foliage color. Now let's take a look at some salt-tolerant plants that are either grasses, sedges, or rushes. Switchgrass appeared on 7 of the resources. This is Panicum virgatum, found throughout much of the U.S. In fact, it was originally noted as a primary plant in the Midwestern prairie. It's found in the coastal plain and the Piedmont region in Virginia. It's a clumping vase-shaped plant with a very extensive root system, reaching even 10 feet deep. It grows about 3 to 6 feet tall in sun to part shade and prefers moist soil, tolerates drought, and you would want to avoid planting it where it would be receiving either excess shade or water because those conditions will cause it to flop. Switchgrass has a strong multi-season presence. You'll see these arching green leaves in the later spring. This is a warm season grass, so it doesn't begin its abundant growth very early on. The foliage is a host to skippers and satyrs, and it has this beautiful, very characteristic airy pink tinge inflorescences, the flowering, and those spikes will appear in July. And then you'll see these tawny persistent seed heads throughout the fall and winter, providing cover and food for birds. In the landscape, switchgrass can be used as a border for pathways, as a lovely screening plant, or a street side planting. This particular photograph was taken here in Arlington County in Northern Virginia, and it's used throughout the county, a wonderful salt resistant plant for those street side areas. The particular cultivar that they are using among the many that are available is Shenandoah, which is a somewhat shorter cultivar, and as you can see, it has a lovely reddish tinge to the foliage. There are many different cultivars of switchgrass that all have slightly different heights and different formations to the inflorescences, or maybe a slight difference in the coloring of the foliage. Another great grass choice is little bluestem, Schizocerium scoparium. This appeared on 5 of the resources. This is found again through much of the United States, very common throughout Virginia. Another clumping plant with erect stems. This is shorter than the switchgrass, 2 to 4 feet tall. It's definitely going to prefer full sun and very dry, well-drained soil. In fact, it can tolerate poor soil, drought, air pollution, and black walnut. And as with the switchgrass, you want to avoid shade, rich soil, and excess water, which will cause the plant to flop. Like many of the grasses, it is deer resistant. The nice thing about little bluestem is the foliage color that changes throughout the seasons. Early on, you'll see these lovely slender blue-green leaves, and these are a host to numerous skippers. Beautiful silvery white seed heads will appear, and the seeds are enjoyed by many birds. And then in the fall, the foliage turns bronze to rust color, and this will linger through the winter, providing wonderful cover for wildlife. In the landscape, little bluestem is particularly well suited to rock gardens and xeriscapes. It can be used in mass plantings on slopes, can actually control erosion there, and it forms an important structural layer in meadows. Another spectacular native grass is pink muhly grass, Muhlenbergia capillaris. This appeared on 3 of the resources. It's found from Virginia all the way to Florida, mostly in the Piedmont region in Virginia. It has a very distinctive rounded crown. It's about 2 to 3 feet high and wide. It grows in sun to part shade, preferring dry to moist, well-drained soil. It's drought tolerant and is in fact intolerant of winter wetness. and as the other grasses, it is deer resistant. Pink muley grass for much of the season will just appear with its glossy arching leaf blades. And then beginning in September and running through into November, you'll see these airy rosy red seed plumes. When backlit by the sun, they look almost like children's sparklers. And they create, seen from a distance, a lovely haze effect. Then you'll see these persisting tan seed plumes in the wintertime. In the landscape, it can be used either as an individual specimen plant, it can be interplanted with other perennials and shrubs. You can use it as a hedge because it provides great cover and perching places for wildlife, including ladybugs, butterflies, as well as birds. And one important thing to note with this grass particularly, but really with all grasses, is the special effect of light on the seed heads. I've found that when I've planted muley grass in an east-west range, it will have the beautiful effect of the morning light from the east and then the effect of the afternoon sun from the west. Another choice would be common rush, Juncus effusus, and this appeared on 4 of the resource lists. This is found in scattered locations natively throughout the eastern United States and is very common throughout Virginia. It's a clumping, vase-shaped plant, evergreen, about 3 to 4 feet tall. It is going to prefer full sun and actually can grow in saturated soil or standing water up to 4 inches deep. It can thrive in moist soil tolerating bouts of dryness, and like the grasses, it's deer resistant. Its spire-like stems do not have any leaves, and these inflorescences will be seen from June to August, and then its seeds will be dispersed either by wind or water. In the landscape, it can be used as an accent plant in beds, as a container plant, en masse in the central area of a rain garden, can be used to control erosion on moist banks or on damp open ground. One of my favorite sedges is gray sedge, Carex grayi. This is found throughout the eastern United States, particularly in the coastal plain and Piedmont regions in Virginia. It's a clump-forming, semi-evergreen plant, reaches about 30 inches tall. This is going to grow in part sun to part shade and prefers wetter soil, moist to wet. It actually thrives at or near water and tolerates seasonal flooding. And like the grasses, it is deer resistant. It has glossy pleated foliage and these very unusual combinations of male spikelets and paired female spikelets that look rather like medieval maces. The brown seed clusters that result will remain on the plant and the seeds will be dispersed by water. In the landscape, it can be used as an accent plant in beds or containers. You see it here in a grouping. It's a little hard to discern because all of the plants are green, but there's a little triangle of 3 plants there. It's also very effective in mass plantings near water. And another plant, which is an obvious choice for the seaside, is sea oats, Uniola paniculata, found in coastal areas from the eastern shore all the way to Florida and then west to Texas. This is native to dune habitats. It reaches about 4 to 6 feet tall, growing in sun and dry sandy soil. It has very deep tap roots and lateral rhizomes that actually help to support the dunes. It can tolerate blowing sand, drought, and brief inundation of salt water. But unfortunately, this particular grass is threatened both by urbanization and either foot traffic or the passage of off-road vehicles on the beach. Sea oats has stemless leaves, narrow and tapering 18 inches, and flat oval scaly spikelets. The seeds are eaten by birds, and it's very attractive when used in dried arrangements. And as I mentioned, it's very important for preventing damage to the dunes during storms. Let's finish up looking at some salt-tolerant native perennials. These would be plants that would typically be found closer to the coastal areas. The first is swamp rose mallow, Hibiscus moschutos. This is found throughout the eastern U.S., particularly in the coastal plain, and it's fairly frequent in the Piedmont in Virginia. This showed up on 6 of the resources. It's a shrubby plant with multiple very sturdy stems reaching 3 to 7 feet tall. It is going to grow best in full sun and moist to wet soil, tolerates heat and humidity, and deer may severely damage it. Swamp rose mallow has large toothed leaves, and these provide nourishment to various Lepidoptera. The flowers bloom from July to September. They're quite large. They're usually white with what is referred to as a crimson eye. Sometimes you'll see a pink variant. And these will provide nectar for bees and hummingbirds. These are the resulting very attractive seed capsules, very ornamental. And this would be a good plant to use either in moist borders, in rain gardens, or beside ponds. You may be interested to know that we have a cactus native to our part of the country. Eastern prickly pear, Opuntia humifusa, is actually found throughout the eastern United States. In Virginia, it's infrequent but locally common. It has the largest range of any cactus in the United States. It's clump forming, growing 6 to 12 inches tall, definitely preferring sun and dry soil. It will tolerate drought, is intolerant of shade, and can grow quite easily just from pads that are simply stuck into the ground. Of course, if you decide to use this plant, you would want to grow it with care because of the barbed bristles, referred to as glaucids, that appear on the pads. Eastern prickly pear's flowers bloom one at a time from June to July. They each last only a day, but they will draw butterflies and bees. They have edible pads and fruit. The pads are referred to as nopales and the fruit as tunas. And this can be used in hell strips, those areas that are right adjacent to curbsides. It can be used also on walls or water-wise gardens. Surprisingly, a New England aster, Symphyotrichum novae is considered salt tolerant. This is a tall, upright plant growing from several stems from a single crown, and it can reach as tall as 6 feet. It prefers sun to part shade and moist soil. Deer may occasionally damage it. This is another keystone species, the aster genus, the Symphyotrichum and the Eurybia. Both support 112 different caterpillars of butterflies and moths. New England aster has these showy composite flowers from August to October, attracting numerous pollinators. Those who have a smaller garden may choose to plant the purple dome cultivar. It has more of a bounding habit, only about a foot and a half to 2 feet tall. One thing to note is that in plant trials, this particular cultivar attracted far fewer pollinators than the straight species did. New England aster can be used in borders, meadows, or butterfly or rain gardens. Another very salt-tolerant plant is black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta, found all the way from Pennsylvania to Georgia and very common throughout Virginia. This is an upright clumping plant, 1 to 3 feet tall, growing in sun to part shade and dry to moist soil. In addition to salt, it will tolerate heat, drought, and clay soil, and it is somewhat deer resistant. Black-eyed Susan has very hairy, lance-shaped leaves, and these will host the silvery checker spot butterfly. Composite flowers appear from June to October, drawing bees and other pollinators. and it can be used in borders, particularly by the sidewalk. It's short-lived, but it will self-seed readily. There are two variations of blue flag, northern and southern, or Virginia blue flag. The first is Iris versicolor, that's the northern species, and the southern species is Iris virginica. The northern species is found from Maine to Delaware with a limited range in Virginia, and Virginia blue flag is found from coastal Virginia all the way south to Texas. Another upright clumping plant, 1 to 3 feet tall. It prefers sun and definitely moist to wet soil, tolerating clay soil, light shade, and flooding. Luckily, deer and rabbits rarely damage it. Blue flag has sword-shaped basal leaves that appear in a fan-like arrangement, and the flowers will appear on fall stalks. These draw hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies. This is, of course, a wonderful choice for rain gardens that are consistently moist or wet. Wild columbine, Aquilegia canadensis, is found from Maine to Virginia in the mountain and Piedmont region, particularly in Virginia. And this is not to be confused with the non-native common columbine, Aquilegia vulgaris. Wild columbine is an erect branching plant, can reach anywhere from 6 inches to 36 inches tall. It grows in sun to part shade and dry to moist soil, tolerating drought and rabbits, and deer, luckily, seldom severely damage it. It has these lovely compound lobed leaves, and the basal leaves will form a very attractive mound. Nodding spurred flowers, red outside with a yellow inside, appear from April to July, and they're going to attract hummingbirds as well as bees, butterflies, and moths. Now, we generally will think of this as a short-lived plant, but it self-seeds very readily. It can be used in borders. I've tended to introduce it initially in woodlands, but I find that it tends to reseed in sunnier areas. And in fact, I often find it either in the middle of my pathways or actually growing out of cracks. So you can see here how it could be salt tolerant right beside the road or sidewalks. A few additional perennials that are more salt tolerant are butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa. This is a great plant to use in borders and particularly in a butterfly garden because it is a highly supportive plant for our monarch butterflies. Another choice is seaside goldenrod, Solidago sempervirens. This is a tall plant, so you would use this at the back of borders. And one vine to mention is Virginia creeper, Parthenocissus quinquifolia. And you can use this with its lovely fall color, either as a ground cover or a climber. Do we have any questions about the salt-tolerant plants I've introduced, Colleen?
Yes, we have one. Christine would like to know if inkberry would do well in Frederick County, Maryland.
I think it probably would grow well there. It seems to be doing well throughout the Mid-Atlantic region.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. That was it for questions.
Okay, well, I hope this talk has been helpful. It's a topic that we hadn't considered introducing before, but we thought it would be particularly appropriate for winter time. And I hope you've gotten ideas for some lovely native plants that you might want to introduce to your garden, not just because they're salt tolerant, but because they have beauty and are quite supportive of our wildlife.
There's one last question, if you don't mind. Someone asked if these plants also tolerate saltwater incursions.
Well, I've tried to mention the ones that could actually tolerate that kind of flooding. I will try to flag those plants, particularly in the addendum document that will be sent out shortly to all those who have attended.
Well, thank you, Elaine. As always, a wonderful presentation, and all the thanks are already piling up in the chat. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Happy gardening.